Today I have the pleasure of speaking to Liselle Joseph. She is an aerospace engineer and she's an assistant professor at Virginia Tech University, so she works in that department. We are very happy to have you here, Liselle, and thank you very much for joining us today.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I feel honored to be a part of the conversation and to help in whatever way I can.
So the first time I saw you reaching out to me, I was wondering, I said, she looks very familiar. And I'm trying to remember, where did I know Liselle from? And after speaking with you, it jogged my memory. And I'm like, okay, all right, yeah, that's where I knew her from. So we do have some familiarities because we were from the same country, both from Grenada. We grew up relatively in the same vicinity, close enough to each other where we can say that, all right, yeah, we know certain places and we know certain people and all of that. But could you tell me a little bit more about yourself, who you are, who is Liselle Joseph, and, some of the basics about you?
So, yeah, little country Grenadian girl. I was born in Mount Carmel, grew up in that area, then we moved like on the border of Maki and Post Royal, so like just country all the way through. I went to a school that a lot of people don't know in Munich called Holy Cross RC. I used to walk from, well, my dad used to drop us, but like I know what it's like to walk home from school and all that stuff, Stone Mango on the way home. That's how I grew up, right? So if I were to say where my roots are, it's in that area of the country. I know what it's like to have people call me country bookie. So yeah, and then I went to Convent Grenville. So yeah, that's kind of where I grew up with the true 100% Grenadian experience.
Okay. So one of the things that kind of came to my mind as you said you mentioned some of the schools that you went to and your roots when it comes to growing up and so is, did you at any point when you were a young student in Holy Cross RC in Munich or when you went to convent, at any point did you envision yourself being where you are right now as an assistant professor at a renowned university such as Virginia Tech?
Oh yeah, the answer is easy. Zero. No. When you're that young, like you're thinking about your friends, you're thinking about everyday things, right? You want to belong, you want to have, your little circle of people. You're not thinking that big. However, I was very blessed. I had some amazing teachers, even in primary school, who kind of always saw something. They would tell me things like, yeah, you never come less than first in test. Like, before I ask the question, you know the answer. And I'm there thinking, yeah, but I want to go play. So they definitely kind of put it in me that I had potential, and that's when I started really thinking about, okay, well, what do I want to do with this potential that people are saying I have? What I did know is what I liked and what I didn't like in terms of schoolwork. I know what bored me, and I know what got me excited, and I just focused on that. So I think the downside about Grenada, and at least the time when I was in primary school, secondary school, we don't have the big picture of all the things we can be. So maybe if we had engineers walking around, or even like doctors, like I'd see doctors not very regularly in our community, right? So it's hard to dream big when you don't know what all the options are, So when I say that I never was like, oh, I want to be an engineer since I was like 5 years old, that wouldn't be true. That's not authentic. But I did know I wanted to be something. I wanted to do something that I loved. I didn't want to be bored. And then my teachers telling me, hey, you have potential for something. Keep working hard. I think those two things together kind of kept me on track until I got to the place where I could see all the opportunities and all the options for us in this world,
So you mentioned the fact about not necessarily seeing anyone who was an engineer or who was maybe what you are right now. But in terms of being inspired to actually get to where you are, like what inspired you to even think that you could be an engineer? Where did you maybe like come across that one document or that piece of paper that said aerospace engineer or anything like that? Like, where did you even come across that?
So the first time I heard about aerospace engineering, I was actually looking to go to university and I was trying to figure out what to study. So I guess it's a little bit of the opposite of what happens to most people, which is that they know what they want to study. I knew what I liked. I knew what I enjoyed doing. And so I then started looking for majors that were in line with that. And I started looking at mechanical engineering. I didn't really look at chemical engineering because even though I had A's in chemistry, I didn't really love chemistry. I was just good at it. And so I was just Googling. I don't even know, was it Google back then? I was searching. And I just came across this aerospace engineering, which was more specialized than mechanical, and it was aircraft. And interestingly enough, I was never one who liked the space side of things, but the aircraft, like the jets moving like super fast above, speed of sound, that just looked cool to me. And so I started reading more about it, and yeah, I was already like 18. I was looking to go to university and trying to figure out what I'd study. So it was never I want to do aerospace engineering for years. It was more like I knew I wanted to do math, I wanted to do physics, I wanted to work on something that wasn't boring, that when I woke up I'm like excited to go solve like a really challenging problem. And then I tried to find the career that fit that.
Okay. So before you moved off to university, I still want to get a sense of who you are, because I think sometimes students think, or people who are actually in school right now, young people, they think that they have to be this, like they have to be this specific type of person in order to be successful academically. But what else were you involved in outside of academics? Like, what else did you like? What else did you do at convent? What groups or clubs you were involved in?
Yeah. I was involved in a lot of things. Like I said, I was just an ordinary Grenadian girl. Even when I got to community college, people didn't realize I had the Marisho Cup. I had just won that as having the most subjects, right? Because I was just kind of a plain Grenadian country girl. So every single school holiday, so summer, Christmas, I'd have to be in my father's workshop in Mackay, standing chairs. He made furniture, and that's just ever since, like that's just what we did until we got old enough. Then we had school and stuff, but that's what just the Grenadian thing. You help your parents and whatever their businesses, right? So I was doing that, just regular kid. Just in terms of extracurricular stuff, I was in Girl Guides, I was in the drum corps. There was a lot of young leader stuff. I would get sent to like SGU and things, but that was toward the end of like secondary school. In the beginning, I just kind of was hanging out with my friends, walking around Grenville, going to school, talking to people. I don't think anyone needs to be, there's no like magic thing that you need to have, except you got to know who you are and you have to be passionate about something. And I think something that, I don't know if this is our community putting this pressure on people, but we have a certain idea what bright is. You have to have the maths and the physics and the chemistry and stuff. No, I think people have different types of intelligence, and you can be like, there are some things that if you were to give me to do, it would be a disaster. Like, I cannot paint a picture. Do not give me a dress to sew. Don't do that unless you want to be looking just ragged. Versus my sister, who's like, she just sees stuff and she's like, oh yeah, this could go with that. I'm like, yeah, okay. Whatever. Yep. And I think we need to take that pressure off of our students, for sure. We need to figure out what we're good at, and that's what you need to pursue, because you can be bright and intelligent and successful in anything. And that, I think, is the actual key. There's no like special thing that differentiates me from someone else. I think what it is I found what I'm good at and I went hard on that. And I think anyone could do that.
Yeah, and I think as someone myself who taught at a secondary school, and I taught a technical subject as we call it back home.
Yeah.
I see a lot of that, what you just mentioned, where people think that if you're not doing the typical A levels and you're not doing the typical chemistry, biology, whatever else, you're not necessarily intelligent. But, you could maybe figure out a technical thing because you're not as smart as you should be and all of that stuff. And I used to always tell my students that your intelligence is different from other people. You might give someone else a measuring tape to use and they have no clue how to read that measuring tape because they don't have that intelligence. Like your dad. Your dad is an extremely talented, we call him joiners back home. People may call them carpenters in the US. But he has intelligence that many people would not even understand how to build these types of things that he did. Right. So, I think we really need to expand our definition of intelligence and the way that we embrace people who can do different things, because I think it really hinders people exploring the area in which they love. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that is a really, I think, powerful and intrusive way to break someone's spirit. Because imagine like you're a student and you put in, I don't know, like the business section, like you feel less than, and it doesn't have to be that way, because you might end up making millions versus the engineer who doesn't, right? But you break their spirit, and so they're just like, oh, I guess I'm not that smart, I'm just going to try to get by. Whereas had you just build them up and say, this is great what you're doing, you have this special skill, they might have been the best business person or the best chef or the best whatever, right? And so kind of going back to your original question of, is there something special? I think yes, but it's different for everyone, and we need to find what that is. And when you do, go hard, go all in, dream big. It sounds so corny, but like just go hard for it.
Yeah. And that is why we're doing what we're doing, like the initiative that we're taking to help young people who might be in that decision-making process of trying to figure out, is university for me? Is this the path that I want to take? Should I go to the U.S. to study? Should I go maybe to a Caribbean university? Should I just go to a trade school, or just go to TAMCC or wherever you are, whichever island you're listening in from or country you're listening in from? You might be wanting to decide on what you should do, and this is part of why we're doing it, because we want to let you know that you have the ability to do great things, but it's just a matter of finding what fits you and what works for you. So I'm really inspired by what you said. And after you've decided, okay, you know what, I'm interested in aerospace engineering, so I want to pursue that. Could you give me like a little step-by-step process of how your university journey started and how that went, and then you arriving at the point where you have all of your degrees and all of that?
Yeah, that's a lot. So I guess I could start with the actual logistics, and because that I feel I can sit here and tell you all about the flowery, dream big and stuff, but if you can't figure out the nitty gritty of how to apply and get your application in, and when you get here, how to deal with the culture shock and all that, because that is a real thing. So when I got here, I had the 2 years at TAMCC, the community college, and the university initially wanted to start me as a freshman, but I had to advocate for myself and say, no, I have chemistry and math. You have to count this. And I think I had to get a letter from TANCC to talk about the accreditation and all that before, because you have to understand your application is just one in thousands. Yep. So sometimes you do have to advocate for yourself. And so that is the main point I'm trying to get across here. When you come over to university, you're talking at Virginia Tech, we have something 25,000 undergrads. That's a lot of people. So you have to have that confidence and advocate for yourself. I remember when I just got there, because I was now a transfer student, I was kind of not fitting in with the freshman, but also not fitting in with the sophomore. And so what did I do? Did I just kind of go, okay, well, I'll just take what? No, I went and I found the department head and I sat down with him and I said, look, this is the situation. The advisor is telling me I cannot do these subjects. Like, there was this lady telling me, oh, this is going to be really hard for you. Like, those are hard subjects. You might just want to do, one or two. And I think that was because of, the accent and the color of your skin and stuff. So she assumed some things, right? But I thought I could do better than that. And so I went and I advocated for myself. I got added to some classes and then I got placed where I think I deserved, which was like, now I only had 3 years to complete instead of the 4. So I think what I'm trying to say here is try to understand the system before you go. Like, even when I just got here, I had all my forms and stuff filled out from Grenada because I was making calls to the university figuring out what I needed. So I had all that filled out, and when I got there, I made sure the department head knew me. I made sure some professors knew me, and then I found some mentors. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have mentors, people who are kind of on your side. And who will also advocate for you. So those were some of the things I did in undergrad to be able to move forward. I'm not going to pretend there wasn't challenges because, like I said, I showed up with an accent. Clearly, I had some pigment. So I was treated a certain way. I've had some things said to me where I was like, yeah, you kind of just said that. Like, I remember one guy was like, oh, do you just like sit at home and like smoke weed on the beach? And I've had people be like, oh, we can't understand what you're saying. You don't really sound professional because I have an accent, right?
Yeah.
So be ready to navigate that, but that's where mentors come in. And it could be anyone who kind of is ready to be on your team and help you navigate those things. So I've faced those things, but I think you have to really be resilient. Understand who you are, understand your worth, and yes, those things might take you down for a day, but don't let it be like, oh, well, I don't belong here, I'm gonna quit type of thing. So by the end, I was involved in things like AIAA, which is like the National Society for Aerospace Engineers. I was in an honor society. I was on an accelerated program to get my master's degree. This is the same girl who, when I just got there, the undergrad advisor was like, yeah, I don't think you should do this class because you probably will fail. By the end of it, I was in the top 10% of the class. So I think it's important to just remember who you are and what you want and go hard. You got to work hard, though. I'm not going to pretend it was easy.
Yeah, I think there's so many things you've just said in that entire experience that resonates even with me. But it also resonates with some of the things that we're trying to do at Global Ed Recruiting Agency to kind of help students to navigate some of these processes so that they don't necessarily have to have those same experiences. And it's not that we're trying to hide you from having genuinely tough experiences, but it's just that now that we have a bit of knowledge and we understand what it takes, we kind of want to prepare you in some way. So that's why, when you talked about the fact that they wouldn't necessarily accept your degrees from TAMCC or your qualifications also from TAMCC, the universities that we work with, we make sure that they understand that students are coming and they're going to be considered transfer students off the bat. Like, they're not going to be freshmen. They're going to have qualifications that are valid, that are very heavily weighted, and those classes can be deducted or removed from their core curricular activities that they have to do because it is equivalent or even higher than some of the classes that they will be taking in the very beginning. It lessens the cost of the university, it lessens the number of courses you have to take, and it puts you in a situation where you can graduate even faster. So that is why we do what we do, and it encompasses all of those things. Another thing that you mentioned is that, being in a new environment, the culture shock, and then having certain things said to you just because of how you speak or the way that you look. It is a real thing. We're not trying to hide that from people. It's going to happen. as to whether or not it's going to be one of those very front-facing things that you see happening like in a store or somebody confronting you. Maybe not, but it might be some like micro aggression, like some passive comment that somebody might make that you can point out and say, that feels different. I've never had that done before. I've never been in a store and the security guard keeps trailing me. You know what I mean? Like all of those things, those are real concerns. So you should know that even before you think of coming to the US to study. Those are things that you can encounter. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, it is a real thing, and usually, at least in my experience, when it's happening to you, you don't really know. You know, just this doesn't feel right. So I would encourage, and that's why I admire what you're doing. You're creating a network now that the people who are about to go through this, they can then call us up. They can rely on us. They can listen to these type of recordings and understand what's happening to them, so they could maybe navigate that a little bit easier. My approach was just, okay, I'm going to show you. Because a lot of the guys who said some stupid things to me, they didn't even make it. They didn't end up getting a degree. But I think, I'm not going to lie, the U.S. has some racial problems that it's trying to work out. But I do think that there are people here who are genuinely invested in helping you succeed. So I don't think that should be like a mental block, like I don't want to go to the US because they're racist or whatever. I think those are things you can navigate, and if you work really hard, you can succeed. But just be prepared. You might get some comments and some, just educate yourself and know what they are and remember what you're worth. I remember like feeling, so I had taught for a year in SAS before I came here, and I remember feeling self-conscious about telling people that, because I felt like maybe they would think, oh yeah, you were teaching in like this third world country, like that doesn't really like count as work experience. But when I actually told people about it, they were impressed. So it was almost like, because I had experienced these microaggressions from other people, I kind of brought myself down a little bit, but then other people were just amazed and impressed, right? So I think a big thing for dealing with that sort of stuff is to rely on your network. Educate yourself, reach out to people, who've been there, but also remember that that is ignorance and that has nothing to do with you or your worth. And don't diminish yourself based on that. And that is hard to do, but it's important.
Yeah. I'm just like some of the things that you're saying, it's the same things that I've been thinking about for years. And, I taught at a secondary school myself before I came to the US. And, what I want to tell people is that don't be fooled. Our education system needs a lot of work, but a lot of the students who are coming from the Caribbean and are headed out here to study, they have what it takes. They've been through some of the rigors, and some of the things that we had that made us a bit more self-reliant, because we don't have the same technologies and we don't have all of that stuff, is an advantage to us to some degree. I'm not saying that we shouldn't improve, but don't feel like you're not capable of doing it, because a lot of Caribbean students come out here and they don't just slide by. They excel. They graduate with honors, and they do things that are beyond the scope of domestic students. And a lot of domestic students, meaning students from the US, they might not achieve some of the things that you achieve, because you have a specific drive, because of the fact that you're spending a lot of money. You're coming from a place where you grew up tough and you grew up having to fight for what you want. So those are assets. Don't see it as deficits at all. You have a bunch of assets that makes you more ready for this than anybody else.
I love that you said that, because sometimes I'd look at some people and I'm like, how are you not going to class? Do you know how much you're paying for this? Because I knew how much I was paying for it, but I mean, they just had it kind of handed to them, right?
Yeah.
So I love this, everything you just said. We have more working for us than a lot of people up here. I remember one time I was an undergrad tutoring other undergrads, and it was a terrible thought, right? But I clearly thought about this person I was tutoring. the people who used to come fourth, fifth, sixth in my class at home wouldn't be struggling with this. They would know this. They just don't have the opportunity that this person had.
Yeah.
So many times we like look at the TV and it's like, oh, America, they're so smart. No, we're just as capable. We're just as intelligent. We just don't have the same opportunities. And I love that this is giving or opening up the space of the options and opportunities that are available, because I think that's what's really holding us back. It's not aptitude at all.
Yeah, yeah. So something I want to speak about too is the fact that a lot of young girls back home, sometimes they are kind of told to believe that their roles are this particular thing, and they're not necessarily going to be that. And I'm not saying that this is unique to our country in any way, because a lot of places you go in the world, women are not necessarily inspired to dream beyond a certain type of job or a certain type of thing. And you mentioned the fact that, some of the students that you had that were male students would make comments to you that kind of alluded to the fact that you are female and maybe you couldn't do this or you shouldn't be here or something like that. So what would you say to those young girls who are wanting to dream beyond just the typical thing that we tell our females to think about or to want to dream for? Because women are just as capable. They can do everything else, like everything. They can do it educationally. So why are we, telling them engineering is for men? And these types of ideas that we put in our young girls' heads. What would you say to those young girls listening to you right now and might be having those dreams of doing those things that they're told it's not for you?
Yeah. Well, I can tell them all the things that, we always tell them, which is don't listen to them, work hard. But I actually think the most powerful thing is to see other women doing it. Because a lot of the communication I got that really affected me wasn't even the verbal ones, right? Because I remember when I decided on aerospace engineering, I told one of my tutors, one of the teachers in TAMCC, and I remember it so clearly. I remember where we were, and he was like, that's going to be hard for you. You sure you don't want to choose something that's easier for a girl? And it's stuff like that, and just not all my physics and math professors were men. I think that's a more powerful message, to see women doing it. And we don't have a lot of that in Grenada. So what I would say is you have to, if you know you want to do something, do not limit yourself to listening to the people around you. And also don't listen to the people who haven't done that thing, because of course they're going to tell you it's hard. They haven't done it either, and they will then transfer their fear and their insecurity and their doubt to you. Look at the people who've actually done it. Look at what they've done, their journey, which is again why I love this platform, because it's showing you what's possible. And that's what I think we should be listening to. So when I tell you, to all the girls out there, like, you can do anything a guy can do. And just between me and the girls, we have some skills that sometimes make it a little bit better. Like, because we have sometimes more of the emotional intelligence, that we can excel in certain leadership positions that sometimes men are maybe not so great at, even though we're told men are the leaders, right? So I think, even going back to, what you were saying, a lot of the things that we count as weaknesses just because of tradition and how, what we've been telling ourselves for decades, they could actually be strengths. And I think women have a lot of strengths that we can leverage in these technical fields. You just have to get in there and be yourself. Like, know your worth, know what you bring to the table, and actually use those things. Not try to be the guy, not try to do what they're doing, because the diversity of what we are, like, that actually provides the best results. Like, even in engineering, a team with a lot of different people, that's where you get the best ideas. So I guess to summarize that, what I want to tell the girls out there is, if there's something that's burning in your soul that you want to do, go find other women who've done it, talk to them, learn from them, and then when you do get to the point where you're trying to do it, don't necessarily let the men around. Be yourself. Use your skills, because the technical stuff we can all learn that, but be your authentic self. Bring that diversity to the table. It is an asset.
All right, thank you so much for saying that, and I hope the young ladies listening, they're inspired by what you've said and your example. I really hope they are. So you've gotten your undergrad degree, then you started to move up. You're like, you know what? I'm not just going to settle at an undergrad degree. I'm going to move forward to getting a master's degree and then moving on to getting a PhD degree and all of that. So can you describe what like motivated you to say you didn't just want to stop here at an undergrad degree? And then basically give me a bit of an insight into how did you approach that master's degree that you got and then moving on to PhD and all of that?
Yeah. So I can tell you kind of the high level things, which is that I really loved aerospace engineering. By junior year, I kind of fell in love with the particular aerodynamics speciality in aerospace, and so I wanted to learn more about that. I wasn't just satisfied with just going to classes. I actually did undergrad research with one of the hardest professors that we had. He would fail everybody in his junior level class, but like that's why I wanted to work with him. And that was great. I realized I loved research. I liked going deeper into things. So that was a big chunk of why I realized, okay, the bachelor's isn't enough. I want to do research. I want to be on the cutting edge of things. I want to be, helping to discover the next thing. I don't want to build the thing that everyone kind of already knows how it's done. So that's how I knew, okay, master's, PhD is the path for me. That's where the passion is. But because again, we're on this platform, I'm going to be super honest about the practical side of things. I did not have a green card. And when you don't have a green card and you're doing aerospace, you don't get a job. So part of it was also like, okay, well, I don't have a green card yet. This is an avenue for me to just keep working on the visa, and then figure stuff out. And I did, actually. I actually got the green card toward the end of my master's degree, just working with professors. Because now when you're in grad school, then you start working with professors closer. Like you have a specific advisor and all that. And they were immigrants, and so they were able to tell me their story. And I was able to get a lot more information for like the logistical side of things, like how do I stay in the country and stay in this field that I love, but which is really, like tied to the military, where you need to be like a citizen to do a lot of the work. So I'm not gonna lie, like that was a consideration as well.
Okay. And I mean, those are honest. We're having honest conversations here. We're not trying to sugarcoat anything. We know what it is. We know the deal. I mean, you want to pursue your degrees. I have a very similar situation. When I did my master's degree, part of my consideration was if I were to go back home, I would be less likely to complete my master's degree. So I need to try to stay here as long as I can so that I can get my master's degree, because that was my next thing that I wanted to accomplish. So those are just real conversations, and we are here to tell you that those are thoughts that you're going to have. Those are considerations that you're going to have to consider. But at the end of the day, it makes you a better person in terms of achieving your goals and, getting where you want to get. So you started with this interest in research. Was there a particular area of research? If it's not something that you can't, if it's something that you can't talk about, that's fine. But was there a particular thing that interested you when it comes to just aerospace engineering in general that really was like, you know what, I really want to figure out how this thing works?
Yeah, so as an undergrad, I fell in love with aerodynamics. So that's so in aerospace engineering, you have different like specialities, right? You can go the space route where you literally just deal with space stuff. You can do structures where you figure out like what materials and how to think of it like an architect, but for airplanes kind of. Then you have like dynamics and control. How do you make sure the aircraft doesn't just fall out of the sky? How do you make turns? How do you like pull up? How do you control what the aircraft's doing? And then you have like aerodynamics, and I just love that. That is studying the airflow and actually how things fly. You know, all the different forces and just moving through air, what that does, or moving through fluid, what that does to something. And I just fell in love with it. It's like a lot of physics, it's a lot of math, and that's just where like I fit. And when I did undergrad research in that field, I realized even more like, yeah, I like that. So that's kind of why I chose to work on that in my master's. I do want to say here something that I feel very strongly about. If you pick something and then it's not working, it's not the end of the world. It's not unchangeable. You can pivot, and whenever like decide to do that, because it's better for you to switch and do something you're excited about and good at than to stay in something and burn out and fail. So when you decide to switch, that's okay. It's not the end of the world. It's not a failure. It's not that, oh, you went and tried to do something and look, you couldn't even do it. That's not it. You learned something about yourself, and you need to take what you learned there and bring it into the new thing. And when I say that, I don't just mean like the personal lessons. I mean like all the classes you did in that one major, make sure they transfer to the other one and they're counted. That's just something I'm really passionate about, because I don't know if it's a Grenadian thing, but we approach failure in a very negative way. Like it's almost like there's so much shame, you know, like, oh, she leave and she go and study and she couldn't even finish.
Yeah.
Really? Mm-hmm. That's something that really gets to me, because to me failure is not that at all. You can always switch to something else.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is very inspiring, and I'm happy that you mentioned that, because as I always tell people, sometimes it is okay to quit. You don't have to keep pushing to do something that isn't for you. And the beauty of the education system, with my limited knowledge about education in the US, because that's where I got my degrees, you can switch your majors. It's not impossible. At the end of the day, you're the one, quite frankly, that's spending the money or paying for what you're wanting to do. So you wouldn't be held hostage and saying that, okay, you have to do this against your will. You know what I mean? So I love that you can start with one thing, and then you realize, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. It's okay. I'll just move on to another thing. I'll find what works for me. So that's all right. It's okay to quit sometimes. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Yeah. So you got your master's degree, and then you said, you know what, I need to get my PhD. Did that happen all in succession, or did you work and then did your PhD, or how did that happen?
So, my path was a little unique. I don't know if this is the way it's going to work for everyone, because it's not the typical thing. But I'm going to share it because I want to emphasize here, you can get to the same place with an engineering PhD from different paths, right? So, like I said, I did undergrad in 3 years, but by my senior year, I realized I wanted to go to grad school and do research, right? And Virginia Tech had this special program for like the top students that you could take your master's classes while you're in undergrad. So like my propulsion class, instead of taking the undergrad version with the rest of my classmates, I took the grad school one. So in that way, your 2-year master's turned into a 1-year master's. So I was added to that. So my 3rd year of undergrad was actually my 1st year of the master's. And once I realized, okay, yeah, definitely doing grad school, I think the end goal was always the PhD. So I knew I was just going to go through and get the PhD. Why I wanted to get the master's on the way was just a safety net. It was almost like, let me see, you know, if this is right for me, if I'm good at it. So that's why I stopped and like wrote a thesis and got the master's degree. But everything was kind of overlapped. My undergrad overlapped a little with my master's, which overlapped a little with the PhD. And that is not typical. It's because Virginia Tech had that special system, and also I was kind of the top of the class almost, so like you could get into programs like that. And then, like I said, I advocated for myself. Like everyone in the department knew me. Part of it was I was the only one of a very few black people with the accent. So like I'm hard to miss, right? And then I was involved in a lot of things, leadership things and so on. So there was some trust there. And so they knew me, and so they gave me a lot of opportunities when I asked for it. So me wanting to get in that program, that's why I didn't go to another school, because that is another common path, is that you get your undergrad and you go to another school and you get your master's or your PhD, which is valid. It's good to have that diverse experience. Why I didn't do that, I had so much opportunity at Virginia Tech, and there was already that established trust. I had a reputation there. They knew I was a good student. I wouldn't have to go over to this new university where again I would just be a random black face that I now needed to prove myself again. So that was also part of why I just stayed there and did all of it, and things really overlapped a little bit.
Yeah, that, I mean, it's an inspiring story because of the fact that you are so driven and you did so much for yourself in terms of advocating and so. But it's also something that people need to understand, that it doesn't always work that way.
No.
So you have to be open to different paths. I mean, with me, like I started at a smaller university and then I moved to Texas Tech University,
Right.
which has like a population of over 40,000 students. So it just shows that you can go from a university that has 6,000 or 7,000 to a bigger university with more recognition, more resources, more access, and all of that, and then you can, like do the next thing that you need to do.
I really like that you say that, and I just want to mention, because now I'm in the position of professor and I am now, judging students. Like, do I want to bring this student into my grad program, right, and pay for their university? And we look at it from a different lens, because it's hard to get into Virginia Tech. But what you just said, if you come in and you go to a smaller university and you show that like you're capable, then you're so much, like that has more credibility than just coming in and just. So if that's the path you need to go, do it. Get your toe in, get your little foot in the door, and then you don't just keep going. Opportunities will open themselves up. And something else which I've always done and I think is a good idea, contingency plans. Like me getting that master's in case I didn't get the PhD funding or I didn't want to do it. Like always talk to your mentors, talk to people, and have some backup plans, because opportunities will present themselves. Don't just take as many of them as you can.
Yeah. I've heard multiple times that you mentioned mentorship. And the reason why that stands out to me is because I am literally the program coordinator for a mentorship program at Texas Tech University. So, I mean, outside of me doing this free service of just talking to young people about education and how they can get here and what they can do and all of that stuff, my day job, I am running a mentorship program university-wide. And I just wanted to segue a little bit. And if you could just maybe like talk about the importance of having mentors, like having someone who is maybe a little more experienced. They're not necessarily older. All of your mentors don't have to be older than you are, but they have to have a little more experience or knowledge in a particular area where you as the mentee think you can benefit from them. And though it is a reciprocal relationship, because that mentor is going to learn from you as a mentee also, but I think you've emphasized in numerous responses that mentorship is very important in order to succeed at this level. So could you just briefly just talk about the importance of mentorship in education and moving to the higher levels of education?
Yeah. It's essential. It's essential for anyone. But I think it's even more critical for people who didn't grow up seeing in front of them where they're trying to get to. So you need to now find these people who've they're further down the road and they've seen the things, so they can tell you, okay, don't go down that road, or there's this block in the road here. When you get to it, this is what you do, because I've already done it. So that's a huge part of it. When you grow up in the Caribbean and you're not exposed to a lot of things, it's just so essential to have mentors who are able to guide you. And for me, it was just a good gut check. Like, I check with people, like, this is what I'm thinking of doing. What do you think? Just having that, because you have your family, you have your friends, but if they're not in the place you're trying to get to, they are probably not the best people to go to advice about that, because they don't know. And so it's so essential to have mentors, and everyone should in your career. And going back to your point, it's like, you don't have to have one. I have mentors for different things. Like, now that I'm doing the professor thing, I have a mentor for that. But I also have like technical mentors where I want to work with you because like you're a big name in this field that I'm working on. You can help me with the actual technical equations and stuff, right?
Yeah.
But then I have like a career mentor who's like, yeah, you want to join this club or that club or this society. So one, you want to have a mentor at least, but several is best. And just like you were saying, there's no age, there's no gender. Look at it like, I would recommend you look at, okay, where am I trying to get to? All right, that guy, that girl, that whatever is there already. I'm gonna try to get there, because just having someone reach back and show you the pitfalls, and people are so willing to do that, right? Because we've learned so much, and we've had like experiences that we don't want other people to have. So people are willing to do that, and you have to kind of also be willing to listen. So that's why I think mentorship could really just prevent you from making some preventable mistakes, but it could also open up to you things you didn't think about. That's the point, right?
Yeah. Yes, I'm really glad that you spoke about that because, I really do think mentorship is crucial in this journey. So,
And
go ahead.
please advocate for yourself. Be brave. Even if you have to, like, I know for me, I felt like, oh, I don't want to disturb them. I don't want to bother them. I don't want to. People want to help. If you want something, ask. The worst that's going to happen is they're going to say no. Nothing else. They're not going to go on the news and say, can you believe this person asked? No. Advocate for yourself. Say what you want. And let them know who you are, and they can see your assets. Because a lot of times I feel like fear gets in the way of people just kind of saying, hey, I like what you're doing. I want to learn about it. 99% of the people would be like, sure, come on, I'll show you.
Yeah, that's true. That is very, very true. So you took that unconventional path. You got your undergrad degree while basically starting your master's degree, and then you moved on to your PhD degree, like while maybe doing your master's degree kind of thing, like like a mixture of different things, which was relatively unconventional. But now you're in a space where you are trying to decide career-wise, professionally, what I want to really do. So are there any things you can talk about that you want to tell us about, like that journey in the professional sense where you started to work and the jobs that you were getting involved with, or the areas that you were able to lend your expertise and voice and give your ideas?
Yeah. So having a PhD in engineering opens up a lot of doors. You can do a lot. And there's some misconceptions out there, which is again why mentors are important. That once you get a PhD or master's degree or whatever, you kind of have to work in that area. That's not true. At the end of your PhD, what people like us who are now hiring people are looking for is not how many equations you know. It's more of, okay, how does this person approach solving a problem? It's more of like, have you grown as a leader and a thinker and a problem solver? That's what a PhD tells me. It tells me that I can throw you into a situation that you've never seen, and you're going to figure it out and bring me back an answer. So I just want to say that at the end of my PhD journey, I realized, oh, there is like a lot of opportunity for me. So what is it that I want to do? And I kind of went back to the same thinking, like that got me to the US in aerospace engineering in the first place. It's like, okay, well, what am I excited about? What is it that like I would be happy doing every single day for the rest of my life? So I knew that would be something more research focused. And so I joined a large aerospace company, focused on building jet engines, Pratt and Whitney. But my role there was very clear. I was working with the team developing the next generation of aircraft engines. So not the stuff you see on the planes right now, but what you'll see like 10, 20 years down the line. Okay. And that was great because, again, it aligned with my passions. Like, I want to be working on the next thing, the innovative side of it. I spent 3 years there, and the reason I left is because I realized I wanted more of that. So again, going back to that same, what is it that I'm excited about? What is it that I want to do? And there just wasn't enough research and innovation in that job for me. So that's why I ended up switching. So I don't know if you want me to go through like the whole history, but to like answer the question of like how I decide what to do career-wise, it's always, what is it that gets me excited? Because it's not just about me being okay and happy. It's also about, that's when you get the best work from people, when they're excited about what they're doing, when they're invested in it, and when they're passionate about it. So it's good for everyone in that scenario. So I always go back to that, which is why I ended up right back where I started. So now I'm assistant professor back at Virginia Tech, because that's kind of where I got the most innovation, the most freedom to just pursue all the ideas. And but now I have the added opportunity to help other people do that and train students and help them get their graduate degrees.
Okay. So you mentioned at the end of that answer that you're an assistant professor at Virginia Tech in the aerospace department. Or are you particularly in the aerospace department, or just you fall under a bigger category of engineering in general?
So I'm an assistant professor in aerospace engineering. So the classes that I will teach will be toward the aerospace program, and the students that I train who come to work with me as graduate students, they will get masters and PhDs in aerospace engineering.
Okay, that's good. That's nice. Mm-hmm. So the little girl who started after school, as we say in Grenada, stoning mangoes.
Yep.
To now being the assistant professor at a university, Virginia Tech University, which is one of those universities that if you're in that kind of space, you will hear about them eventually, because it's a pretty well-known university. How did that accomplishment feel? Like, just take me slightly into your own like mind of like realizing, oh my goodness, I'm actually now teaching the people and working with staff members that I looked up to, people that I emulated, people that I looked up as, wow, these people are, aspirational. I want to be like them. Now you're in a break room with them, you're having lunch with them, you're doing things, you're in the meetings with them. How did that feel for you?
So yeah, it's sometimes you kind of, it's surreal. You're like, oh yeah, I'm really in this room with these people. I remember I think maybe 2 weeks ago in a staff meeting, someone was like, oh, Liselle, you're back. Like, and I'm like, you taught me structures, and when you taught me structures, you were mean. Like
I know you can actually say it to them, right? Because those are your peers.
And he was so happy to see me, and we're on first name basis. Like, it takes a minute for the mind to catch up and be like, oh, this is really happening. So there is that surreal quality about it, but at the same time, it didn't just happen overnight. I mean, we're talking, I came for undergrad in 2008, right? That's a big chunk of time. I've done a lot of growth in that time, so it was gradual. So thankfully, I feel like I belong in that room because I've earned that. So in a sense, it's like mind-bending when I think about where I started off in Grenada and the fact that these people have no idea what it's like to live the way we, like, our culture. And like, I wasn't poor in Grenada by any means, but like some of my classmates were. Like, I saw that, I know that, I understand that. Like, there were people in primary school that like just didn't have lunch. Yeah. Every day. Yeah. And it's almost like my mom, she teaches, or she used to teach in that same school. and she would just know to put an extra bakes in my lunch
Right. So you
because
can
that
share.
person. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just, and that's just every day. And now I'm in a room with people who probably have no idea what that's like.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, it's like, oh, how did I end up here? But at the same time, I know how hard it was, and I worked, and it's so like, I don't know. Sometimes it takes a minute to sink in. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm really here. I did it. But sometimes I'm just like, of course I'm here. I worked my butt off to get here.
Yeah.
And the reason I came back to Virginia Tech is because I want to lessen that gap. Because in working at like the companies and like the engineering companies, you realize there's not a lot of girls. Like it's not a lie when diversity is a big thing, because it is a real problem.
Yeah.
There are not a lot of black people. There's not a lot of immigrants. There's not a lot of girls. So part of why I'm back at Virginia Tech is to kind of bridge that gap. Going back to what I was saying, you aspire to what you see. So now there is a black woman teaching aerospace engineering at Virginia Tech. More girls are going to come. More people of color are going to come. And I can help prepare them for what's out there, just like I'm doing right now, right? So hopefully my experience and the fact that I'm like, oh, how did I end up here? It's going to lessen and lessen as we move through the years and more people come along this path with us.
Yeah. 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 So one of the things that really troubles our Caribbean islands and our Caribbean countries is the idea of, these people, as these young, talented, smart people who have really good opportunities to excel. They go out into the US and to different countries around the world, and they excel. And we're proud of them. We're happy. We know them. And we're like, you know what? That person is not coming back to Grenada again anymore. They're not coming back to Jamaica. They're not coming back to Belize. They're not coming back to Guyana to contribute to our country. Maybe not Trinidad and Tobago. I can call all these countries in the world where we have so many smart people and so many people who have accomplished things because they had the ability to do so and they had the opportunity, and things. Honestly, sometimes luck just happened. Some people don't believe in that, but sometimes no one's looking out for you necessarily. So it's just a situation where you created a space for that to happen, but you just happen to be in the right spot at the right time too. So
absolutely,
sometimes those things happen, and you're not going back home. And we have this constant thing that we have to fight with about with brain drain and all of that. And it's something that I've given some thought to, because I feel sometimes like I don't want people to perceive that because I'm saying to you, come out to the US to get your degree, that I'm telling you inadvertently that you shouldn't go back to your country or you shouldn't go back to wherever you're coming from to contribute, right? But how do we tackle that issue, that issue that's nagging constantly, like we're draining those brightest and the best of our educational and academic achievers? How do we tackle that? What ideas do you have?
It's a big problem, and I'm glad you brought it up because it weighs on me as well, because there's no path for me at home now. Like, I knew that there's no jobs for me. And I've even brought it up with some of my mentors, like how can I, reach back, and so part of, like, everyone in this situation has a part to play. Like, I can't fix the people who leave. We can't fix it by ourselves. The people who stay can't by themselves. So we all have responsibilities in this scenario. Those of us who leave, when you succeed, because you will, you have to turn around and give something back. That could be money, that could be training, that could be mentorship, or it could just be sharing your story to help inspire other people and again, present to them the range of options that are available. At the same time, we also have the responsibility, and I'm using that word very strongly. I feel like we are responsible just because that's our country. We need to do this. But to reach back and actually validate people there. Yes, I did aerospace engineering. It sounds like, oh my God, you're so bright. But I want to see people go out and study tourism. I want to see people go out and study agriculture, or just all the range of things that we could actually use in Grenada. And so because I studied aerospace engineering doesn't mean, I think everyone should. I think when we learn about things, people like me and you, we come out here and we get exposed to all these things. We need to like then bring it back to Grenada and say, hey, there are all these opportunities out here. The Ministry of Tourism or whatever could look into these things, and we are on this side and we're ready to help and facilitate. But I do think there's a responsibility on the Grenadian side as well. Because the way I see it, this is a push-pull thing. There is a pull out of Grenada. America, England looks very attractive when you grow up in, a tough situation. But sometimes there's also a push, and we have to take responsibility for that. If we don't have the mentality back home of, trying to excel and celebrating our people and like having the government like really be investing in our people and those type of things, that is a push. And we have to admit it. We have to like admit that and do better at that. So I do think not just the government, but citizens in Grenada also need to be open, and you need to advocate for yourself, and you need to work with people who are on the other side trying to reach back and provide something. That's the only way we can actually set up a pipeline. Everyone needs to like admit their responsibility and step up, because we all kind of have the same intention. We all want the same thing. God, Grenadians love Grenada. That is just, I mean, yep. If there was an Olympic medal for loving your country, you would win it, no matter where you are, right? Even Grenadians who, like their grandmother came to America, they call themselves Grenadian, maybe. Right? That is strong. So why is it that then we find these ways to divide ourselves? Be like, oh, she leave and she go, she thinks she better than me, and now she trying to come back and do that like she... No, it's because we love our country and we want to make things better. And you love Grenada as well, and you want to make it better. So let's work together and do that, and stop like the mentality of dividing ourselves like this. We all kind of have the same goal. So the way I see it, I don't have answers. I don't have a strategy or a policy to give you. I think we need to identify the push and the pull, and we need to be honest with ourselves about it. And I think that's just step one. Have all the stakeholders, the people who are over here. There's a lot of, diaspora communities who are willing and ready to help. And there are people in Grenada, the ministry, different organizations who are ready and willing to help. Let's figure out how to bring those two things together. Because again, we have responsibilities, all of us, in this.
I really thought when I was coming to you, I was like, you know what, I'm talking to an aerospace engineer professor at Virginia Tech. She will have the answer for how we can fix planes in the Caribbean. So
if there was an equation, I could find it.
You understand? But yeah, on a serious note, I do really agree with a lot of what you said, and maybe all of what you said. And I think to expand on that, I think there must be a change of... you mentioned that the government should be more supportive of Caribbean students and people going out there to study. And during my experience studying outside, here in the US, there's opportunity for funding, but the government doesn't necessarily provide like very much funding for students in US universities. You can get it for other countries. Yes, it's available. I'm not saying no. But I think the US market it's somewhat more attractive because, for one, the US is the US. There's a lot of opportunities here. There's a lot of universities here that provide quality programs. And plus the US, distance-wise, it's very close as compared to like some of the other countries that have free scholarships. You don't have the language barrier. You don't have to think about learning a new language. You don't have to do all of that. So this is really and truly a desirable market for young professionals or young people who want to study. But we don't necessarily have the infrastructure in place in terms of like funding that gives them that support. So I think if the government were to maybe look into that, might be a way in which we can, bridge that gap and possibly help students to be committed to returning because of the fact that they have that initial investment from the government.
Yep.
And to expand on that, and one of the things that I'm very big on is giving back to my community. So, the whole idea of what I'm doing right now is literally giving back to my community, educating young people about the idea of studying and helping them with the processes and walking them through the steps, and each step of it I'm helping. But just giving back to your community, sometimes sending, a box of goods back home to distribute to your old school, or sending, like, well, in my case, I am into sports. That's what I studied, at my master's level. And so I'll send basketballs. I'll send things that I know people need in sports specifically. That's my area that I like to invest in. So, if you are in the diaspora and you're hearing this conversation, those are just simple ways you can contribute. You can tuck something in that barrel when you're sending back home for your family members. Say, you know what, give the school a couple of these calculators because they'll need it, and something like that. And then sometimes too, professionals like us, we are in spaces where, the US has a lot of resources and they usually get rid of stuff. And if you have the opportunity to take some of that and send it back home, I'm pretty sure it will be appreciated. So those are just some ways in which we can contribute. And in terms of the brain drain question, I don't think either of us have the answer, but I think we're thinking about it. It's on the top of our mind.
And I think it's just important to emphasize that is something real, and we all have a responsibility in addressing that. And I do want to say, what you're doing here, people may not really understand, but in a sense, those of us who do things like this, it's more beneficial to Grenada than to actually, if I were to go back and let's say start to teach there.
Yeah.
Because this is exponential. You're reaching people and then they will reach people, and that is powerful. So there are all these different ways you can reach back and help Grenada. But yeah, we have to kind of change our mentality a little bit on both sides, just the receiving and the giving.
So I guess to wrap this conversation up, I think it is always, throughout this conversation, you've been giving advice. You've been saying things that I think anyone can utilize. But if you were to just summarize that one bit of nugget of advice that you'll give to the young person sitting at home, maybe listening to us and thinking to themselves, you know what, I'm really inspired by this conversation, and I really want to do something. I really want to aspire to do something great for myself, just so that I can say that I achieved something that I felt in my heart I can do. What word of advice would you give to young aspiring students who wish to pursue university education?
It's just literally one word.
It doesn't have to be one word. Words of advice, I should say that. So what words of advice would you give to young people sitting in the Caribbean, sitting in Grenada, sitting in wherever around the world that wish to pursue higher education?
Yeah, so if I were to summarize it succinctly, look inward first. Figure out what it is you want to do. Then look outward. Do your research. Figure out who it is that's doing it. Make those connections. And then just do it. If you fail, pivot and do something else.
Yeah, just do it. That phrase, just do it.
Because I left by myself. My entire family is back home in Grenada. And I just went out and I tried it. And I think I got pretty far. You can do that too. But you will never know until you do it. However, you can't just go out there doing things crazy, right? Think about it, research it, and then do it.
All right. So thank you very much, Liselle, for this conversation. I am very much inspired by what you've shared, and I'm pretty sure that people listening and coming across this conversation will be inspired themselves. So I just had this exhilarating conversation with Liselle Joseph. She's an assistant. She's a assistant professor. Yes, I got that right, at Virginia Tech University in the Aerospace Engineering Department. So thank you very much for being here, and thank you very much for doing this.
Thank you.